I want to hear what you people think about this because I am speechless. We can use this to understand the reality of Japanese politics beyond all the names and posture. On February 20th, Hideo Watanabe, chairman of the Japan-Myanmar Friendship Association, and Taro Aso, vice president of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, accepted a medal by the Myanmar military regime for their supposed contribution to the development, peace, and prosperity of Myanmar. You will remember that any semblance of democracy in Myanmar was thrown in the trash can when, in February 2021, a military coup d'etat overthrew the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. And since then, the military junta has been non-stop decimating its own civilians. At that time, the Japanese government joined almost all the rest of the world in condemning the coup and halted its development programs in the region. But exactly 2 years from that, we're seeing how some of Japan's most prominent politicians and officials are not too upset about this. As I mentioned before, Taro Aso is the vice president of the right-wing LDP and also former finance minister, while Hideo Watanabe is a very interesting fellow. Former telecommunication minister, he was elected 6 times with the LDP, then jumped from faction to faction to land into the Democratic Party of Japan, a left-center party, then again joining the nationalist right-wing New Renaissance Party, and after that retiring from politics in 2010. On top of that, he has close ties with Myanmar's Union Solidarity and Development Party, which is a proxy party for the military that was created after the former junta was dissolved, and now one of the protagonists of this renewed regime. To give you an idea of the character, after the coup, Watanabe told the Asahi Shimbun that Min Aung-hlaing, the leader of the new regime, didn't actually stage a coup, and I quote, did what he should have in accordance with the law. These are the conservatives in Japan. Not all of them, of course, but these are there. The government itself cowardly refused to comment, with an official of the Japanese embassy in Myanmar stating that it cannot comment because the award went to individuals. As if this was completely unrelated to a government that apparently values its economic interest in the region more than it values the lives of all those poor civilians. Now, let's go fast because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. North Korea. Let's analyze what happened starting from this. On Monday night, during an emergency meeting of its Security Council, the United Nations failed to condemn North Korea for its recent missile launches towards Japan. The resolution met the vetoes of China and Russia, 2 of the 5 Council's permanent members, and also close allies of Pyongyang. The meeting had been called because of a series of events that escalated the tensions in the region. On Saturday 18th, North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, that landed 200 kilometers off the coast of Hokkaido and inside Japanese waters. To this, the US responded on Sunday by flying long-range supersonic bombers near North Korea for a separate joint exercise with South Korea and Japan. The next day, on Monday 20th, North Korea responded by launching another 2 short-range missiles towards the Sea of Japan, which prompted Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to request the emergency meeting. Then, on Wednesday, Japan, South Korea, and the US held a rare joint naval exercise in the Sea of Japan in order to demonstrate ironclad cooperation between the 3 countries in the face of a threat. For what concerns the UN meeting, Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno openly blamed China and Russia for blocking what was going to be nothing more than a declaration. And after the meeting, 2 separate statements condemning the launches were issued, one by South Korea and one by 10 other council members, including Japan and the US. The missile, which North Korea is banned from possessing by the UN, was fired with an almost straight-up trajectory to avoid flying over other countries, and reportedly had a range of 14,000 kilometers, making it capable of reaching the entirety of the US mainland. Now, the situation seems to be the same as usual, but there are some key differences. So let's start this analysis from what we know. We know that North Korea typically performs these launches as a show of force, either for internal consensus around important dates and celebrations, or as a response to military drills in the area. These also give Kim Jong-un the occasion to try new offensive technology. And earlier this month, North Korea showed in a parade a mock-up of a new solid-fuel ICBM. We don't know yet if that missile was in fact solid-fueled, but if so, this would mark a significant advancement for Pyongyang. Solid-fuel missiles don't have to refill for long times before their launch, which would make them stealthier and more difficult to preemptively counterattack. Many analysts consider this constant buildup of a nuclear arsenal a way for Kim Jong-un to be in a position of dominance in future dealings with the United States. But so far, there is no negotiation in sight. Another fact we know is that Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi announced last Sunday that China and Japan would have held security talks this Tuesday and Wednesday, an event that last occurred 4 years ago. Of course, in that time frame, there was the whole COVID situation, but Japan's relationship with China is chilly at best. There are a series of other issues the two countries are fighting over, including the increased military presence around Japan of Russian and Chinese militaries, and the territorial claims over the Senkaku Islands. So this announcement should give us a good idea of how serious the situation is. Anyways, from what we know, these formal talks didn't lead anywhere and focused more on Japan's military buildup and China's spy balloons. But most of all, failing to condemn North Korea for its actions showed us how much the United Nations have become a joke in these past years. The worst part of it all is that last time they took action, it worked. US Ambassador to the UN Linda Thomas-Greenfield noted that thanks to the sanctions approved by the Security Council in 2017, Pyongyang refrained from any major provocations for nearly 5 years, and also engaged in dialogue with the West. This is causing Japan, South Korea, and the US to focus more on deterrence, which, don't get me wrong, it's important, otherwise it will end up like with Putin and Ukraine. But for what we know, they aren't even trying the diplomatic way. An editorial by the Asahi Shimbun notes that to have cooperation from North Korea, the forced route is to pass by China, its major ally and economical partner. But all of the other countries involved have strained relationships with Beijing, and a de-escalation would require them to first resolve their own issues with the country, which, given recent events, doesn't look like it will happen in the near future. So, what we should expect from this situation? Well, Chad O'Carroll, CEO of Korea Risk Group, an analyst service that monitors North Korea, wrote Monday on Twitter that the latest missiles test suggests we're in for a bumpy ride this spring. He proceeded to note that the situation that's emerging shows us that neither side will stand down, and we only need one fatal miscalculation from any of the sides involved to turn this into a direct confrontation, a clear possibility for the year ahead. And I really hope he's wrong, because between Ukraine and the tensions around Taiwan, yay! And for our last piece of news of the week, here's something that tells us a lot about Japanese society. On February 17th, the Justice Ministry announced that in April it will introduce 2 new immigration visas. They're called the Future Creation Individual Visa, or JFIND, and Special Highly Skilled Professionals Visa, or JSKIP. As their names imply, the two are respectively aimed at attracting highly educated individuals and high-income earners, and they will consist in simplified pathways for those people to immigrate in Japan. JFIND recipients will be able to look for work by staying in Japan for up to 2 years, compared to the current 90 days of the standard immigration visa, while the JSKIP holders will be able to skip the current point-based system, more on that later, and be automatically considered for jobs that require a high degree of specialization. Now, while the news per se looks good, Japan opens up to immigration, the reality is a little more complex than that, so let's start by looking at the background. As it goes for many other rich countries, immigration towards Japan is hell. As I mentioned before, the normal immigration visa lasts 90 days, which is the standard in many countries. Work-related visas, on the other hand, are difficult to obtain and very easy to lose, as, depending on the category, workers are forbidden to change the industry in which they work. For instance, students who graduated from a Japanese college on a student visa were allowed to only work for jobs that required those specific skills. Measure that was changed in 2019 to face a huge shortage of Japanese workers in the retail and restaurant industry. For what concerns elite immigration, the system currently in place is called Preferential Immigration Treatment System, or quite ironically, PITS, which is a point-based system introduced in 2012 and used to determine if you qualify either as highly educated, having a high degree of expertise, or if you're an elite investor. The system is tragically absurd because it puts so many barriers based on income and education that it has been amended in recent years because it was completely useless. Right now, to be considered worthy of seeking a professional job in Japan, you have to score 70 points. I'll leave you the form in the description, but I'm also going to show you a part of it right now so you can get an idea. For instance, among the other stuff that you're seeing now, knowing the language at a native speaker level, which, trust me, is extremely time-consuming and with a very difficult test at the end of it, accounts only for 15 points. Researchers or engineers must have an annual income of 20 million yen and either a master's degree or higher, or at least 10 years of work experience. It's clear that by its nature, this system discriminates by education and income, and it's unfair to anyone below high middle class, and therefore it's not really working. To give you an idea, in the 10 years since its introduction, only 34,726 people had been given the status of Level 1 highly skilled worker, less than 3,500 per year. Therefore, these two new visas are supposed to solve the problem that the PIT system did not address. But, spoiler alert, they won't. Or at least, I don't think so. Let me explain. I've talked multiple times about the changing demographics of Japan, so you already know that the country has a super aging population and that they need new people fast. But what I didn't say is that Japan doesn't need elite immigration, or rather, it does need that on a social level, but if we're talking economics, Japan desperately needs blue-collar workers. Look at this graph by Statista. It shows the percentage of companies by industry that are experiencing labor shortages of regular, full-time employees up to January 2022. As you can see, not only it's the vast majority of the industries, but the ones most affected by the shortages are restaurants, constructions, maintenance, and so on, which can hardly be classified as highly specialized jobs. The reason for this is obvious. As a society gets richer and richer and the new generations have a higher degree of education, they will want to put their skills to use in their field of expertise and avoid doing cheaper, less qualified jobs, even just for the sake of having invested in their education. And in a moment when the whole workforce is shrinking, even if all these college graduates would go back to manual labor, that still wouldn't solve the problem. Even these new visas, the way they're designed, they won't bring much immigration toward Japan, which is exactly their real purpose. For instance, one of the requirements for the J-FINE visa is that the applicant must be within 5 years of graduation from an institution within the top 100 universities ranked by at least 2 of the free ranking websites in use. This will reduce the target of these measures to literally a handful of people per year. So much so that the Justice Ministry declined to share the projections of how many applicants these measures will attract. And again, while this in itself is good news, more people will be able to immigrate to Japan, it's not a solution. The solution to these long-standing issues is open, large-scale immigration. And what I'm about to say works for Japan as for any other rich country, like the US in part, and a part of the European Union. Until we reframe the discussion surrounding immigration with an honest and factual perspective, rich countries with a shrinking population and labor shortages will continue to suffer and get worse. There is no beating around the bush. Japan has to get rid of its cultural purity and homogeneity ideas and face the facts, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how bad it will get before they do something. This is it. I'm Kay, and this was Japan This Week. Follow me every Saturday for more updates on what's going on over there. As usual, thank you for watching, and if you like my work, please share these videos, leave a comment, like, and subscribe. See ya!